Lately, they're going to be one big reason why you're going to pay more to fly. FBN's Jeff Locke at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago with more on that. What's going on here, Jeff?
It's all about that jet fuel, Neil. You know, they say gasoline prices have been up a lot. Well, they have, but take a look at the numbers. Gasoline prices, nothing like the increase in jet fuel prices. Gas up 24% in the last year. Jet fuel up 54% in the last year. That certainly cuts into profits. And Doug Parker, the CEO of American Airlines, saying, yeah, if this keeps up, we're going to have to raise fares. But he also added this. He said, then again, that may not be the case because it may be that we all just make less money. I don't know how many CEOs you know that would be content with that. I don't know too many. Either way you cut it, it's cutting into profits. Take a look at the latest forecast from the International Air Transport Association just out today. Profits will still be good, about $33 billion, but down 12% from last year. Good luck if you got to fly, Neil.
I don't know, buddy. They weren't blaming the prices when they dropped and a sudden cut in airfare tickets as a result. But I don't know. I'll leave it at that. You're the best. I appreciate it, Jeff. All right, so we're off on a wing and a prayer when it comes to traveling. The 5 is now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is the 5. It's a big day at the White House as President Trump marks 500 days in office by touting his accomplishments. The economy is booming, the North Korea summit is back on, and the president has rebuilt the military. But the dark cloud of the special counsel Russia probe continues to hang over his head. This weekend, someone leaked a 20-page letter the president's legal team wrote back in January to Mueller's lawyers. It argues that President Trump cannot possibly commit obstruction of justice and that he has the broad authority to pardon himself. This morning, Trump tweeted he has the right to pardon himself, but wouldn't because he's done nothing wrong. This comes after the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, said in interviews the president might have the authority to pardon himself.
Do you and the president's attorneys believe the president has the power to pardon himself?
He's not, but he probably does. I mean, he has no intention of pardoning himself, but he probably does. It doesn't say he can't. I mean, that's another really interesting constitutional argument. Can the president pardon himself?
The White House is also addressing this issue.
The president said that I have an absolute right to pardon myself. Why does he think that? And does he also agree with Rudy Giuliani, his lawyer, that a pardon for himself would be unthinkable and would lead to immediate impeachment?
Thankfully, the president hasn't done anything wrong and wouldn't have any need for a pardon.
Does the president believe that he is above the law?
Certainly not. The president hasn't done anything wrong.
All right, so 500 days, Greg.
Yes.
I think a fair assessment, whether you agree with his policies or not, he has accomplished quite a bit.
I like to think of it as the 5th anniversary of his first 100 days. A lot of stuff has happened in 500 days, but I'm not talking about the White House. I'm actually talking about your life. The key is life went on for everybody for this 500 days. And even a Trump critic has to admit that your life either stayed the same or it got marginally to dramatically better. That's pretty much the options here. But it didn't implode because according to the predictions, by now, we would have had a civil war, we would have had a nuclear war, we would have had a depression, perhaps asteroids would have hit. So the point is, we have had peaceful prosperity. Life went merrily on, and if people just step outside of their emotional bubble, they'll see that this is a pretty good age to be in right now. And your biggest problem you have is a president that drives you crazy because you don't like his personality. But you have prosperity, you have low unemployment, you have a strong economy, you have no ISIS, you have perhaps North Korea actually becoming part of the world. But imagine if there was bad news. Imagine if there was bad news, how the media is already in a constant meltdown with good news. I mean, imagine if things were actually bad.
Yeah.
We'd have to institutionalize all of them. They'd be going crazy.
All right, so Juan, are you sick of all the winning?
Yeah, this winning is just killing me, I'll tell you that. I mean, he's so popular. I mean, stunningly popular. He's not popular with the general populace. but he's very popular with Republicans. And I think that's what's keeping him afloat. So Greg says, oh, everything is just great, so much, but I think this is a president who worries people. I think that's why people are concerned about him. And if you look at the accomplishment, his number one accomplishment I saw in the White House release was the tax cuts. And of course, Republicans don't even think they can run on tax cuts in the fall because they just haven't proven to be that popular. The second one, I guess, is keep putting a conservative, Neil Gorsuch, on the Supreme Court. And I would say hats off. You guys won that one, but I would give the credit to Mitch McConnell, who saved that seat from Merrick Garland. And then if you look at the rest of it, well, even on the tax cut, the deficit continues to rise incredibly, and no progress on infrastructure, which was a key promise, and no wall. I could go on, but you know what? I think if you want,
Please don't go
it
on.
feels to me like you guys say 500 days. It feels to me like, wow, 500 years.
Well, it looks like it, Juan.
I know.
And you even had a week off.
I
Because he was so exhausted from winning, he's like, must take a week off.
The one that really gets me is the immigration stuff, but we'll talk about it later. But
we will.
immigration and kids, that one.
I understand, and we will get to that. Kimberly, the
Yeah,
pardon
that's evil.
situation, legally, that might have been some gamesmanship. It looks like he got set up, Rudy Giuliani, on the question. Didn't really know what to say there. How do you see the whole pardon thing playing out today?
Yeah, I think you're right, because if you look at the nuance there, Rudy kind of said, well, it poses an interesting constitutional, question. Can the president pardon himself? I mean, well, then the president followed up with a tweet saying, in fact, that he can. So perhaps he then spoke to someone, says, you're safe to go ahead, and tweet that. Who knows? But nevertheless, you don't even want to get to that point, right? You don't want to even suggest that that would even be necessary. The president would have to do that. You would just say, okay, well, I've done nothing wrong. So I actually don't even have to get to the question of whether or not I can pardon myself, because there will be nothing on the merits to suggest any kind of criminality on my part. That's like the messaging that I would stick with that position, because if that's in fact what he believes, and he knows the facts and what transpired better than anybody, in terms of what's gone on, and then of course being apprised by his counsel of what's gone on, that's kind of probably the way to stick with it, because as you saw, the press corps then was saying, does the president think that he's above the law?
Oh, what a question.
Yes.
That was.
You want to also
Not
kind
loaded at all.
of switch the discussion, like Dana says, give them the points to kind of talk about and drive the messaging, talk about the economy, sort of the Trump golden age of the economy in terms of job numbers and things like that, and not be discussing the whole criminality issue.
To bring up the P word unprompted on a day where I think
You
a
mean
lot
pardon.
of yes, that's what I meant, obviously, Dana. Wow. In a day where everybody was talking about Bill Clinton.
I saved, Dana.
And the Lewinsky thing.
That's a different P
And he
word.
drove, yes, thank you, Greg. He drove that out of the news cycle, and now everyone's talking about pardon.
Well, I mean, the White House brings us on themselves a little bit, right? So the president's tweets are driving the news cycle.
Right.
So when he's tweeting about it, you can bet that that's what people are going to talk about. So if you only want people to talk about all of these good things, tweet only about those good things,
Right.
and that would be helpful. I do think it's interesting that, you had this Republican Congress for 2 years. 5 months from tomorrow is the midterms, and right after that, immediately, the day after, you start the 2020 election. And I think what is so interesting is that
I
the
know.
Democrats...
Hear that one?
Here we go again.
But the Democrats are so befuddled at this point, because what do? You have, as Greg was pointing out, you have all these good news things. If all of these good news points had happened during the Obama administration, they would have touted them too. And it could be that the Democrats are going to have to just use this time to step back and sit. If you're timing, politics is timing. So regroup. You got to fill out those ranks out in the states, because that was all depleted during the Obama administration, and figure out a way to try to at least get through the midterms. If they could flip the House, we'll see. I think it's really, I guess it's 50-50 at this point, and the Republicans looking so much stronger. So the Democrats have spent 500 days not figuring out how they lost in 2016,
Right.
which means that they are behind in figuring that out, because 2020 is going to be here like before you know it. And I don't see how the roaring economy changes. I don't see how the foreign policy position changes in 2020, unless there's some catastrophic event, which hopefully there is not, but that we are better positioned to deal with. And in the meantime, parties change, they evolve. Obviously, this is what's happening with the Republican Party, but the Republican Party has done that. That, I think, is pretty much over. And so the Democrats are the ones now that are in a position of figuring out, who are we, what are we going to be?
Yeah, they might have to reinvent themselves.
Let's hope so. The Democrats have an advantage in that they are out of power. And when
Right.
you are out of power, you have all the time in the world to get back into power. That's what you're supposed to do. That's why, you know, Carter was a reaction to Nixon. Reagan was a reaction to Carter.
Obama.
But yeah, everything's
Obama
a
to Bush.
reaction to somebody else. But the problem is, they've spent the last 2 years in a tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
They've blown all this time. I don't even think they've found anyone
What would
of potential.
be the
And
reaction?
not compromised.
Yeah.
Like,
What would be the reaction to Donald Trump? Could you imagine what the opposite
No,
of Donald
but that's
Trump is?
but that's a very good point.
ISIS,
because
high unemployment.
No, but I'm saying it could
jobs.
be somebody incredibly left wing, because you always see the pendulum shift, and if they get it, they might try to, like, he's undoing everything Obama did. The next one is going to try to undo everything Trump did.
If the opposite of Trump probably is a female, Hispanic, very polite librarian.
No, but the
He's like,
thing
no.
The thing is, I think that you're right. The pendulum swings. But remember, if a Democrat was doing what Trump is doing, let's say, this weekend is part of this business about he can pardon himself. It came out that in that letter, it was acknowledged that, in fact, he had dictated this letter about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting at Trump Tower with this Russian lawyer. And we had heard from the Trump officials that wasn't true repeatedly, from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Jay Sekulow, and others. So now it comes out that we were lied to. And I just think if Obama did something like that, Jesse, I think you would be standing on this table, brother. You would be screaming about Obama.
That lie is not even close to Benghazi. So yes, he did lie.
Benghazi. Oh yeah,
He did lie.
But we haven't had
Blame it on a
exhaustive
movie.
investigations
Blame it on a
that
movie.
show nothing. Anyway,
He lied about a
my
letter, not dead ambassadors.
Oh, stop. So my sense is that we have here a situation where the Republican Party has consolidated around Trump, or Trump has made the Republican Party into the Trump Party. That's the big change in the first 500 days.
Well, you say the Democrat Party became the Obama Party.
I don't think that's the
And
case
look
at all.
what happened under Obama's leadership. They were, as you said, decimated on the state and local
Just real
level.
quick, in terms of the accomplishments of the first 500 days, there are considerable, especially as it relates to the economy. And you saw people really having a difficult time going against President Bill Clinton when the economy and the numbers were good. So what is the antithesis of that? To undo the economic numbers, to undo jobs, raise unemployment. I mean, so
Yes.
right? But this is the point. Hey, ISIS, come back in, come back into the
they need
field.
bad news.
No, but they need a candidate to try to bring something forward, some
need
kind
bad
of
news.
messaging.
I don't think it's the opposite. I think it's the kind of the polar political
Well, so then that's a Kamala
guy who
Harris.
looks like Trump. And you know who
No, I
that
think
is?
it's a-
Bernie Sanders.
well,
Bernie Sanders.
They already
who
tried
would
that.
White
say-
guy, Juan.
who
Why
would
is it
say
always
the
an old
tax
white
cut-
guy?
The tax cuts benefited the rich. Bernie Sanders would say tax cuts that benefit working class people.
Not the rich in California and New York.
Healthcare, education for young
I think you're looking at somebody like a Kamala Harris, a strong candidate like that.
Oh, you
that
mean a
can-
woman?
Yes, absolutely. But also what in terms of what she
And a
stands
strong woman
for,
this time.
and somebody who isn't the same candidate ran before, run through the the rinse cycle one more time.
Juan is still feeling the burn after 500 days. The media's obsession over the First Lady's recent whereabouts hits overdrive. Greg's got the details up next.
Yesterday, CNN once again became that nosy, detestable neighbor, Gladys from Bewitched, who gins up phony concern only to spread malicious gossip about the First Lady's whereabouts. Check out this tweet from our nation's hall monitor, Brian Stelter. If any First Lady disappeared, you'd want to know where she is. See what he did there? To justify the odious premise, he first had to create the premise. If any First Lady disappeared. And so begins a Trojan horse for a ghoulish game, all to push a phony CNN segment. See, instead of saying, is Melania missing? They pitch their segment as how the media is covering Melania's absence. So they're covering how they're covering it. I guess we should cover how they're covering it.
One thing that the president and the White House have been quite quiet about is Melania Trump and her status. We did see her tweet the other day, but the first time we've caught a glimpse of her, the last time we caught a glimpse of her was on May 10th.
I wonder if somebody's guiding that kind of tweet from her. That doesn't seem like her, at least the image she's had in her engagement with the press.
Well,
if the First Lady or the person who's standing in for First Lady disappears, you want to know where she is.
Clowns.
So crazy.
They even had a chart. How sophisticated. And so the speculation fueled endless guessing games on Twitter. The pleasure many found in hoping something was wrong with the First Lady and then cloaking it as some kind of concern dwarfs any of the jokes with the C word. CNN, HuffPo, Newsweek, Trump has deranged these ghouls to a point that they barely have any humanity left. Just when you think you hit the bottom of the cesspool, more cesspool. Some even suggested that Trump beat Melania.
Oh, God.
Trapped in their own prison of pain since 2016, their misery only seeks company. I swear, Jeff Zucker must be spinning in his grave if he wasn't alive and well. Or is he? Has anyone seen him? See what I did there?
Yeah.
Dana, this is what people do on Sundays. I mean, there were actually people sitting around tweeting about if Trump has Trump beat Melania?
That is really gross.
Yes.
And these are
some were conservative.
Remember when the media was really upset about any questions about Hillary Clinton's health during the campaign, and that was out of bounds?
Mm-hmm.
But there was actually, she did faint.
Yes, yeah.
Right when she was trying to get into that van, and that was out of bounds. And she wanted to be the president of the United States. The First Lady does not have any, she's not an elected person. She can do whatever she wants. I hope that she's well. And it would be more believable if they really cared how she was.
Yeah, I don't think they care. That's the thing that gets me, Jesse, is the camouflage.
Right.
We're just worried about her. No, you're not. You don't even like her.
Yeah, like last week they were making all sorts of disgusting commentary, and now they're so concerned about her health. The media's spending more time wondering where Melania is and not wondering where ISIS is. Don't you think they'd spill some ink over that? I mean, Trump made ISIS disappear. Melania hasn't gone anywhere. Let's focus on that. Peter Strzok went missing. They haven't shoved a camera in Peter Strzok's face. It would seem like the media might want to get some answers about his whereabouts. She had kidney surgery 3 weeks ago. It's an incredibly invasive and delicate procedure. I'm sure she wants to come back on her own terms at her own time, and that's fine. But Trump's marriages have always been subject to tabloid fodder. They speculate. It's good ink. People profit off of it. It's good for clicks. And she's not the most, she doesn't speak a lot publicly. So there's a vacuum there, and she doesn't have a robust PR machine. So they fill the void with these speculations and the narratives that have no connection to reality. And I think it shows the disrespect to the first family. Last time it was Ivanka, then Melania. This week, they don't respect them like they used to anymore.
Juan, is this just another example of because there's just so much good news, you got to go after the First Lady because she might be recuperating, or maybe she just likes to do whatever the hell she wants.
Right.
Maybe she just doesn't want to go to church.
I don't know. I don't follow Twitter the way you do, but I don't know that there's any antipathy toward her. I just haven't seen that. I think
there are people. Anybody made fun of her accent? Remember Chelsea?
No, people have said that, but and I think people have questioned, her health. They didn't know much about this, and now subsequently. But anybody who's sick, I think you have to have some sympathy for them. Mm-hmm. The big question here is she's supposed to have an event today. I think it's for Gold Star families. Yeah. And they closed it to the press. Mm-hmm. So at some point, when you're in power and you start to keep the press out, the press is like, hey, what's going on? And I think that's what you're getting. But you want to attack the press for this. I just think, if the White House was transparent and said, the lady is 48, she had surgery, and she wants to have a rest period, I think everybody in America would say, God bless her, hope she's recovering well. But that's not.
Not the people. You haven't looked at the tweets.
I haven't.
They talked about her getting beaten up.
I don't know. You said conservatives. Why is anybody even saying that?
Because they're awful people. And I won't even mention their names because they're beneath. They will not be mentioned on the 5, but you can look them up. Kimberly?
Yeah, I just think it's really disrespectful. Obviously, this was a serious, medical condition. She had to get this kidney embolization. She was at Walter Reed. Perhaps she needs some time to be able to recover and get back on her feet. She has a very stressful job because she's not, treated well in the press to begin with. So there's an emotional and psychological strain to begin with, and now a physical toll on her body. And she's, a mother of a young son. And so she's going to spend time as well with him. I'm quite worried about, his mom. So what is the point here. They acted like she was like a missing persons thing. Like, it's just crazy.
This White House is the most transparent thing in the history of history. I mean, we know everything.
Well, they make fun of it for being like a reality show, but then when they think that like this is part of the act, right? Like, oh, they're hiding Melania from you, so you can't see her, so now that has to become part of the storyline or something.
And feign that they're concerned. But they're not actually concerned at all. If they cared, they would respect privacy and let her get better instead of making a mockery of it like she's a missing persons alert on a milk carton.
All right, coming up, Bill Clinton, he could have been the first lady. Creating new controversies with his comments on Monica, the media, and more next.
Gentlemen requested, let's go for a ride.
20 years after the scandal that led to his impeachment, Bill Clinton ignites a new controversy. While responding to questions about his affair with former White House intern Monica Lewinsky in the wake of the Me Too movement, the former president makes a surprising revelation during a contentious interview on the Today Show.
Did you ever apologize to him?
No, yes, and nobody believes that I got out of that for free. I left the White House $16 million in debt. But you typically have ignored gaping facts in describing this, and I bet you don't even know them.
I asked if you'd ever apologized, and you said you had.
I have.
You've apologized to him.
I apologize to everybody in the world.
All right, so Greg, it's 20 years and not a day has gone by that you have not thought about or talked about the Clintons. I mean, not just you, I mean all of us.
What did he expect on this book tour? The questions are going to be about his breezy beach read, his writer's process. I mean, if Anthony Weiner came out with a cookbook, do you think all the questions are going to be about the risotto? Of course not. It's going to be about what you're going to be known for the rest of your life. Look, I'd love to move on. Everybody would love to move on, but you can't move on if the Clintons don't move on. If the Clintons are still in the public consciousness, then we have every reason to go, geez, remember that 20 years ago? And I do agree with him on one point. He got away with a lot of things. I don't think he got away with Monica, because I think that he will be known forever for that thing. That's a scar on his life and the lies he told after. But there were other things that he got away with that the media doesn't question.
Don't you think, Juan, that this book would have been a #1? The book is a collaboration with James Patterson. James Patterson had to do a after the show taping today because of the briefing. So he was on today. They did this collaboration. James Patterson has sold 300 million books around the world. This book would have been a bestseller even if Bill Clinton didn't do any interviews, but they decided to do it. So he probably can't be surprised by the questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's surprised, because I mean, I think the interviewers are just being thorough. And I think clearly it's been in the news, and there's so much sexual scandal, #MeToo, apart from the sexual scandal, Stormy and all the rest, that I don't see how you get away from the questions. In fact, hats off, I guess that was Craig Melvin who was doing the question, because it was quite direct. Although I felt, James Patterson looked like he was a hostage there.
I know. He wanted to crawl back into his book.
I'm just the author.
Yeah.
But I must say that, so Clinton goes on to add, Dana, he says, if this was a Democrat in the Oval Office right now, the impeachment proceedings are already be underway. So he fires back and says, hey, don't forget, I did pay a price. And even Greg says that's the case. And if it was today, he thinks that somehow Trump is not paying that price.
Well, but Jesse, is part of that, though, the decision that the Democrats made in the 1990s for how to deal with Bill Clinton?
Right. I mean, I just can't believe you have one president comparing his affair with another president's affair or alleged affair. It's ridiculous. And he's playing the victim the whole time, like, oh, I got a lot of debt with the lawyers after that sexual escapade. It's typical Bill Clinton. He gets defensive. And the deference. He didn't receive the deference that he expected. It almost took him so by surprise. I don't think Bill Clinton could have survived if this had happened in 2018. For so many reasons, the Clinton war room, the way it went into overdrive against Lewinsky on a personal level, they never would have gotten away with that anymore.
But part of that, though, Kimberly, don't you think one of the reasons that 2018 is the way it is because of the storyline that kicked off in 1998 and 20 years later? The Me Too movement is a part of it, but I think it's been one long story building up into this moment. And the other one thing I wanted to ask you is, Craig Melvin asked Bill Clinton, did you apologize to Monica Lewinsky? And he says, I apologize to everyone. But this issue still is a sticky sticking point.
Well, there were a lot of
for
women.
them. Well, but he's in particular talking
Without
about
listing them
Yeah,
all,
everyone was like-
going through, and I just want to apologize. I want to thank you for the question. Yeah, it's tough, right? But he was excited about doing this book, and from what everyone's saying, this is supposed to be a very interesting book, especially with killing off the First Lady. Very interesting there. But besides that, you know, he's put on the spot for this, but you can tell that he is still resentful even about being asked the question, being put in that situation. He still views himself psychologically as the victim in this case. He's probably still standing by the narrative that he gave, you know, years ago, thinking that, okay, well, listen, why are they coming on me? I'm being unfairly persecuted, and look at all the debt I got. Well, that's like a typical, like, narcissistic sentiment that he's engaging in there. So it's not particularly charming. Don't know if it sells any more books for him, or poor James Patterson, who wanted to look like he wanted to crawl inside the inside cover of the book and hide. But nevertheless, he went out there. If you're going to go out there, they're going to ask you those questions.
Did you say narcissism? Oh my!
Could I raise?
Oh yes.
I hope Patterson doesn't do another book with Weinstein, because he's got a poor track record. What if Hillary had been elected president? Would Bill have been a problem every day? Maybe not, because there might not have been a Me Too movement if Hillary had been elected, because Weinstein might have been protected, since he was very close with Hillary. Maybe that story,
deep state.
that story never would have come out. The Harvey Weinstein story never would have come out. No Me Too. Bill would have been fine. So actually, you should thank Trump.
If you are interested in the book, if you go to, I think the Five's Facebook page, maybe the Daily Briefing or whatever, Twitter, whatever, it's a pretty good interview, and he talks about the book and cyber terrorism. So there is actually a political thriller, not just the Lewinsky stuff. Okay, a Democratic lawmaker films himself getting turned away from a Texas immigration detention center. But there's a lot more to this story. Next.
Just thinking about all our good times together.
Yes. As the immigration debate heats up, Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley is accusing the Trump administration of cruelty toward migrant children. This comes after the senator was denied entry to a Texas immigration facility.
Hello, yes. Can I go in with you, please?
No, sir. You're not going with me.
Oh.
You cannot be here for private property.
My team contacted this facility and asked for permission for me to come and see what is going on inside with these children.
Well, we don't have any permission on that, so I'm going to have to please ask you to step away, sir.
Well, Senator Merkley has since revealed that he was notified in advance that he would not be allowed in. So, is this just a publicity stunt? Welcome back, Juan.
Well, thanks. I don't know if it's a publicity stunt or not. I think there's a legitimate purpose for an American senator, our legally elected representative, to say what's going on here. I want to see how these children are being treated. But the big story to me, Kimberly, is one that I just find difficult even to control, which is you're separating children from their mothers and fathers. And it's not that these people are sneaking in. These are people who are seeking legitimate asylum as refugees. So we've never done this as Americans. So you get a letter from the Democrats saying it's antithetical to American values, but also to just plain old basic decency and humanity. And I was stunned. At first, I thought, this can't be right. And then I read that John Kelly, the chief of staff, said this is a deterrent that's going to stop people from doing this. But wow, I mean, these people are seeking asylum. And separating children? I just think that's not good.
But this isn't something, Jesse, that is unique to the Trump administration. It is the law on the books in terms of how people are processed and handled when they come into the country illegally.
It's been the law in the books since the Clinton administration. Trump is actually enforcing this policy. It's a zero tolerance policy. If you get caught crossing the southern border, you're going to get prosecuted, and they don't do catch and release as much as they used to. Juan, if you're a family and you show up at a legal port of entry in this country, you will not be separated. These are for people that are coming across the southern border in a very dangerous situation. And you were saying the other day, you don't know if these children are being trafficked. Yeah. You don't know if the father is actually the real father of the son or the daughter that you think may be related. You don't know that. So until they make that determination, they separate. You also brought up a good point the other day, too, is you're not allowed to put minors in federal penitentiaries. Right. You can't just be mixing people of all ages in holding facilities. You put these minors in a temporary shelter, and then you find sponsors for them within the United States, usually with family members, and then they're case can be adjudicated, and it usually takes years. But the point is, what the Trump administration is trying to do: one, deter, and then treat these children with their uttermost safety and welfare in mind.
Absolutely not. But I don't want to dominate the conversation. But I tell you something. To me, this is offensive. I don't think you treat children that way. You can deter people. You can say you want to change the refugee policy, fine. But to take a child away from its mother,
but you're assuming facts not in evidence.
Southern border is pretty.
Right. Sorry. I think the problem is that then you're assuming facts not in evidence, which is that in fact this child is from this parent. We don't know that. So many times when I was in court and you're prosecuting cases, you couldn't get anyone's true name or identity. There were 17 aliases, not in the system. You have a very difficult time trying to find out who's who. You have unaccompanied minors coming over with gang affiliation. So you've got to sort it out. You have an obligation for public safety, to do so. You had someone coming over pretending to be a minor, getting fostered by a family. Turns out he was 22 years old. I mean, it's just crazy.
Senator Feinstein, who's in a tough re-election fight, she wants a new law to revise one that she had sponsored years ago to try to deal with this. I think it should be dealt with, certainly. And I also feel like that the senators, I understand that they want answers and they represent constituents that want answers. And a proper way to do that would be to contact the Department of Homeland Security Legislative Affairs team. Call them up. They will respond and make them answer to you rather than, try to exacerbate it.
Okay, perfect. Greg.
This is happening because the prison bus for babies lie did not work last week. So now they're trying to do the prison for babies trick. If you remember last week, they showed a picture of a bus with little baby seats in it, and they called it the prison bus for babies. Turns out it was for a field trip. So this is desperation. This started with the lie about 1,500 kids going missing because of Donald Trump. No, those children arrived without their parents, okay? And so America tried to do the good thing and place these kids with families and whatnot to keep them safe, and then they, quote, lost track. Who lost track of who? That's a really good question. It may have been they didn't want to be found, depending on the age and whatever, but they separated themselves. All this is, and what you're talking, what Jesse's talking about, is about safety and deterrence.
Right.
If you have to remove the free lunch, so that's a deterrence, but you also got to make sure these kids are safe. Right. So you can't leave the kids with adults in a prison or a detention facility. I mean, it boggles the mind.
If they had commingled them, and there was one crime
Oh my God,
committed,
the senator would have been great. You put kids in with inmates.
You
By
put
the way,
them in.
Donald Trump can totally destroy the Democratic Party if he has an Oval Office address and presents Donald's DACA. His own path to citizenship, call it Donald's DACA, and rely on a simple understanding that you play by the rules, you desire to contribute to this country, you're in. That would destroy the Democratic Party.
the Republicans wouldn't even buy his plan, as I recall.
It sounds to me like it's Trump's party now, Juan.
No.
That's what you said.
Well, yeah, it is.
So maybe they're going to line up at their cash register. They're going to buy it.
What?
Maybe they're ready to line up now to buy it.
I don't know, but I know they didn't buy it when he put it out. And the key point here is the assumption should always be that a child belongs with his mom or her mom or parents.
They arrived without their mom.
Right.
Once the idea that you guys
are missing 1,500.
I think you guys are really missing the idea that something so essential and so much a part of family values would be violated.
No, there's nothing to do with family values. It has to do with public safety. Why are the children coming over unaccompanied? Where are these caring parents?
Kids are terrorists now?
Actually, just release them into the street, Juan.
What?
Just release them into the street instead of.
What are you talking about? Let them be with their mother.
They're in a different facility.
What if the mother's being prosecuted?
We're trying to go through it. Let's cue the picture from 2014 of children in cages from the Obama administration.
It's not all about asylum.
In a minute, they're all going to be members of MS-13, according to you. I find this really terrible.
I mean, well, some are. Okay, the Supreme Court sides with a Colorado baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. What it means for religious freedom next.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke.
In one of the most closely watched cases of the term, the Supreme Court has sided with a baker, a Christian, who refused to make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple on the grounds of religious objections. The justice is ruling 7-2 for Jack Phillips, finding that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission failed to respect his right to freedom of religion. However, the High Court stopped short of a decision on the broader issue of whether a business can outright refuse to serve gay and lesbian people. So, Kimberly, let me just say that Justice Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the opinion, said that this denial is not based on public accommodations, because under public accommodation laws, you would have to serve these folks.
Sure.
It's based solely on this specific baker's religious objections. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That's exactly what it's based on, because if it was public accommodation, then you would have to make, allowances for it. But this is strictly a religious freedom case in terms of applying it specifically to the facts of this case and saying somebody should not be infringed upon or discriminated against pursuant to their religious beliefs. And in this particular case, the way that it was laid out in the fact pattern demonstrated that this person had a religious objection to being able to do this, and that religion should be, respected and not infringed upon. So I think it was pretty, specifically tailored in this direction, so it's not as broad as perhaps some people might have initially thought.
But Jesse, the question then becomes, and I think a lot of people say, well, this is a danger, so that, if Jesse is sitting there and he says, you know what, I don't want to deal with the women on the basis of my religion, Jesse can say, no women allowed in here.
Sounds like a terrible religion. I don't think that's something
exists.
I hear what you're saying. Listen, I mean, I'd bake a wedding cake for a gay wedding. I mean, it would probably taste terrible, and it would be made of Duncan Hines. No one would ever want that at a gay wedding or any wedding. I think this guy can do what he wants. It's a terrible business decision.
What kind of analysis?
More gays are getting married, and there's a lot of gay wedding cake money coming in. Why turn that down? Money's green. I don't care, who's paying you, bake the cake. But that's his liberty to do, and that's fine. But like you said, they've just kicked the cake down the road here.
Nice.
Because this is such a narrow decision. All they do is slap down the Colorado Commission of Civil Rights. They haven't really adjudicated, the whole decision about religious freedom versus gay civil rights. That'll come later.
Dana, what do you make of the fact that
What analysis?
That you get two Democratic nominated justices, Kagan and Breyer, siding with the conservatives on this?
Well, I think that's because it was about, as Justice Kennedy said, tolerance has to go both ways. So the Colorado Civil Rights Commission did not do the right thing initially. What I wish that the Supreme Court had done is just went ahead and done the full thing and rule on the issues of religious liberty that the country is hungry for them to decide on. Obviously, we're so polarized, we can't figure it out on our own, and so the Supreme Court is really still trusted, and I think that now we're going to have to go through this again. Another case is going to have to come up through the court. It'll be a couple, 3 years before we get a final decision.
Greg, I always think of you as a libertarian, so I'm curious.
It's difficult. We have a new C word, cake. This stuff is so complicated that's why it's decided by the Supreme Court and not by us. I mean, you have to think about the rights of the baker. You have to think about the state being biased against religious rights. But then you have to think about respecting customers, because if you're open to the public, the public comes in, but then again, my feeling is you shouldn't have to do anything you don't want to do. Like, I don't like all people. I don't like anybody. So if I had a place open to the public, I might not serve you because I don't like the color of your shirt. Like, if I don't like plaid, you're out of here. But the thing is,
he just wants to sit at the bar by himself.
This is a very difficult thing. The law shouldn't compel you to do something. So maybe you don't do it, and then you pay the price of losing business, as Jesse would say. You become known as being kind of a jerk.
Yeah, so he wouldn't also bake cakes that criticized God or contained alcohol.
Yeah.
So he was a really strict.
I am not you going to that bakery.
All right.
No, but that's a good point. Right. He couldn't do it. I mean, I don't practice religion, so he wouldn't make me a cake.
Yeah.
I drink. We used to make me a cake.
Remember Lester Maddox? He said it was his right not to serve blacks. Anyway, one more thing. Up next, we're going to change the mood around here.
Yeah.